Good morning and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to look at money out from QuickBooks Online and we're going to make sure you have the best way of putting money out. Good morning and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to look at money out from QuickBooks Online and we're going to make sure you know the best way of getting expenses into QuickBooks.
I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it starts. I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter if you want. All the way that I feel, yeah, I know that it's real, 'cause I can get him out of my head.
Hello, I'm Aaron Patrick and I'm a qualified chartered accountant and a certified trainer for QuickBooks Online, and I'm here to show you today how we can get money out into QuickBooks. So have a look at it. Okay, let's look at money out then. So this is really important when you're trying to get information into QuickBooks. So you're trying to record your bills being paid or your expenditure that's going through from QuickBooks Online. So one of the quickest ways to look at money out is use this new button over here. And from new, we have the ability to jump into suppliers and we can look at an expense or a bill. Now, first and foremost, the difference between a bill and an expense is a bill is a transaction that you're going to pay for at a later date, and an expense is something you've already paid for. So as an example, if I was going to a post office, I would look at an expense because they're not going to let me walk out of that post office without paying for those stamps. Bill, on the other hand, we would want to use a bill for something we're going to pay for later down the line. So for the first thing we're going to look at is a bill itself. So from a bill point of view, we get the opportunity to create a supplier at the top. So we're going to choose maybe BT in this case. We get to put the bill date in here and the terms and the due date, so we don't miss on actually paying this particular bill. And from a bill number point of view, I tend to put the actual transaction number itself. So whatever the invoice number they've given you is what I put the bill number. We then get to choose a category. So in this case, I'd probably want telephone. And I even get a subcategory in this case. So I'm going to put it against landline. Description, I could say maybe this is the quarterly bill. I can put an amount in. And I can put the appropriate VAT that's associated with it. That then works out the VAT for me. Remember, I'm on exclusive of tax at the moment, and I can move down to inclusive if I need to. But on exclusive, it's going to add the VAT on. I have an area here for memo. I can write in anything I need to include. And I even have an attachment box here. Now, the attachment box is really useful. So if I click into attachments, I can put in the attachment. I know this isn't quite the attachment for this one, but as an example, when the attachment is loaded and included into QuickBooks, I can then save that and I then have the ability to go back and recall this at a later date. So as an example, if I was to save this transaction or even save and close, and for whatever reason I wanted to bring that transaction back up again, I could then go down to my attachment and click into there and bring that transaction up. Now, the reason that can be useful, though, is that means your client doesn't have to keep those paper records with them. They have the opportunity to only need to include the electronic versions going forward. And it can also be useful when clients are out and about and they have access to all their different expenses directly in their mobile phone. So remember when we looked at the mobile phone app and we could recall all our transactions there? Well, this makes our life easier. So that's putting a bill in place. The other option is I might want to put an expense in. Now remember, the difference between a bill and an expense is an expense has already been paid for. So in this case, let's do a post office. I then get to choose how it was paid. And that's the difference between a bill and an expense. So I get to choose then what it is. Is it paid from the petty cash or from the bank? I then choose my date. And just for audit purposes, I can even say how I made that payment. So cash. Reference number if I want to have an internal reference for it. Description, and in this case it's also brought forward the last expense that I've done. It's tried to automate it for me. So because I last put a post office for £15, so because I last put an expense in for £15, I can now go in and I can put it for say £18. Again, I've got the attachment option at the bottom, so I'm going to put in that post office receipt. and I'm going to press save and close. Now it makes even more sense that when I do my search and I do post office, I go back to that post office and an actual relevant receipt is now attached directly to it. Also within Money Out is it looking at my suppliers. So if I jump into expenses and suppliers, it gives me a nice breakdown, a nice list of all my different suppliers there. I can also go up to this top bit up here and I can see a nice little what we call money bar, which is giving us a breakdown of what needs to be paid and what's not. So at the moment I've got that open bill of £300 for my BT, but it's not overdue yet, so that's a good thing. If I need to look at this in any more detail, click on the open bill and it'll bring that down for me. Now if I want to jump into a supplier, I'm going to get the same sort of view that I got when I looked at a customer, where my transaction view is down the bottom, and at the top here it gives me an option to interact with this supplier. Now I'm going to interact with the supplier. I've already explored what bills and expenses do, but I also have the chance to put in the supplier credit. So if the supplier has issued me with a credit note, I can put that in on the system. And it also gives me the chance to post a check. Now checks are normally used, and ignore the phrase check, it can be used for any manner of way of payment, but we normally use checks if we're doing a payment on account. It distinguishes then what's been paid but we haven't got a bill against it just yet, as opposed to something that has been paid and we're trying to allocate it accordingly. We also get the opportunity to mark these expenses as paid. So in this case, I've still got this bill as outstanding, but if I've made that payment, I can tell QuickBooks that by using the Make Payment option. And from the Make Payment option, I can go in and I can pay the bill off. So I can make sure the bill's been paid, and make sure the date's correct, and I can make sure the account's correct at the top. And once I make that payment, save and close, that bill's now been paid. There are ways in which I can speed up putting data into QuickBooks. So example, if I jump into my Vodafone and I look at my Vodafone transactions, you'll notice that they're happening on a regular basis, so 10, 11, 12. Now, if I wanted to go in and put the January 2020 and the February 2020 transaction in, I don't have to go and add each one individually. What I can do though is recall the last transaction. So in this case, I'm going to go into December 2019. I'm going to use the More option down the bottom here, and I'm going to copy that transaction. What that means is I only need to update the bill number. I can then change the date to a January 2020 date. I then only need to change my amount to whatever the bill was. And then when I press save and close, that bill's been added. I can then quickly do it for V5 as well. So I'm going to go More, Copy, put that to V5, put that to the 28th for the 2nd, and change the amount as it needs to be. And as you can see, I'm quickly putting the transactions in, and using that copy function makes my life easier in terms of putting mass amount of data into QuickBooks. And that's Money Out in a real quick and easy way. There's more advanced functionalities, including the ability to put purchase orders in as well. And when you put a purchase order in, you can then convert it to a purchase invoice. We'll look at that later in the series. And there's ways in which we can use third-party apps to bring data in much more quickly and efficiently. The other thing to remember about this is how it's going to interact with our bank account. And in our next video, we're going to look at how we interact with bank and how we get that all working nicely with QuickBooks Online. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it's been useful to see how that Money Out feature works. And in the next video, we'll look into banking in a lot more detail so we can see how that works. Thanks for now. Stay safe.
I say yeah. I told him I can be a fighter if you want. I'll be there to catch you if you fall. I can make it brighter when it starts. I told him I would do it all for you, and I know you do it for me too. I can be a fighter if you want. Yeah, I can be a fighter. I can be a fighter if you want. I can be a fighter if you want. Oh, the way that I feel, yeah, I know that it's real, 'cause I can get him out of my head. I don't care what we do. feelings feeling new. Even if we're staying in bed, my heart is saying yeah, yeah, yeah.